John Carpenter's science fiction horror The Thing left a lasting impression on viewers not only because of its atmosphere of paranoia and stunning practical visual effects, but also due to its ambiguous ending. The question still lingers in the final scene: which of the main characters is infected by the alien creature and who remains human? This video is dedicated to searching for that answer, but I won't be taking the path of meticulously analyzing the visuals for clues and hidden details. Many creators on YouTube have already done a great job with that. Instead, I'll offer a slightly different perspective on the matter, one that might just lead us to a solution. Enjoy the video. There's no point in retelling the Thing's synopsis, so let's get straight to the core idea that drives the film's conflict. For many of us, this is a film about paranoia. It's paranoia that terrorizes the characters and drives them to the brink of madness. When people talk about the Thing, they often highlight its paranoid atmosphere. Viewers, critics, and even the actors themselves. It's no surprise then that the creature is often seen as the embodiment of paranoia, its amplifier and carrier. But that's only the part of the picture. Classic horror movie monsters aren't about obvious fears. They embody unconscious, hidden, and repressed fears, which are of course reflected in the protagonist. Unfortunately, I can't recall who originally said this, but variations of this idea have been impressed more than once by those who study films. After 2001: A Space Odyssey, you can't make science fiction without referencing Kubrick, and after Alien, you inevitably have to check in with Ridley Scott, and that's exactly what we'll do. In both stories, we follow a group of people isolated for an extended period from the rest of society. They are trapped in a confined space with no real communication with the outside world. And outside their refuge are harsh, deadly conditions. Surviving without the help of technology is virtually impossible. All these people are connected mostly through personal relationships. They're colleagues working together on a common task. There are no women, no elderly, no children, no siblings, or any hint of familiar ties at the Antarctic station. Then, one day, into their familiar world bursts a being from deep space, bringing chaos and destabilization. The xenomorph is a creature that kills because it has no other way to reproduce. The Thing, on the other hand, isn't about reproduction or even killing. It's a chameleon that can assume the form of any living creature it encounters. At first glance, the Thing and an alien may seem unrelated, but that's not entirely true. They share a common origin and DNA. John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, the screenwriter of Alien, were friends from college and even collaborated on Carpenter's debut film. In 1975, the two co-wrote a story called They Bite, about an insect-like creature that stalked humans by mimicking them. The core idea would later inspire both Alien and The Thing. Alien is terrifying because to it we are nothing more than reproductive vessels, just flesh to be forcibly impregnated and used to incubate its offspring. The Thing frightens us in a different way. When you encounter it, you might survive. The transformation is grotesque, yes, but your body will eventually be reborn and seemingly intact. Unlike the xenomorph, the threat here shifts to the mental level. Even if your organs, tissues and cells are recreated perfectly, we feel that after such a process we would no longer be ourselves. We would lose some or all of our individuality. The core fear is the loss of ourself, or the part of our personality we call the ego. Let me explain this with an example. Imagine you had access to a teleportation device that could instantly transform you anywhere in the world. But first, your body would be completely destroyed, and then, a moment later, rebuilt somewhere else. In other words, you would literally die and then come back to life with the exact same physiological structure, atom for atom, molecule for molecule. From a biological standpoint, nothing would change, but intuitively we sense that the newly created version, even if materially identical, would not truly be us. us. This fear becomes even clearer if we tweak the experiment. What if the original you wasn't destroyed during teleportation and both versions were allowed to exist at the same time? Which one would be real you, or would both be equally valid, like identical twins sharing the same habits and memories? That's somewhat right. We emphasize another aspect of it. A group of people are confronted with the problem that one or more or all of them could be the same, that is, be taken over the thing. We are concentrate on the amount of paranoia this produces between them. It's about losing your identity. So I support my claim with the words of the creator himself. The thing is above all about the fear of losing one's identity, and everything in the film in one way or another pushes the viewer to reflect on this theme. The fear is embedded in the setting and dialogues. It's the foundation of the conflict between the antagonist and the protagonist, and it's reflected in the main character's central arc, as you'll soon see. Let's think logically. On one side, we have a monster that attacks by becoming you, that is, by erasing the identity of its victim. Therefore, on the other side, it must be opposed by someone with a strong sense of self, someone for whom losing personal wholeness is more terrifying than losing life itself. Now ask yourself, who would be perfect for that role? Now take a closer look at the hat worn by our protagonist. It offers no protection from the cold and serves no practical purpose, just like his leather jacket, by the way. But both tell us exactly who John McCready is: a cowboy. The classic cowboy in American culture is a lone wanderer from whom freedom and independence are the highest values. He's tough, unemotional, and decisive when it comes to using violence. The cowboy is a character outside this system, living on the edge of civilization and close to the wild. He walks through his life guided solely by his internal moral compass and principles. Breaking those is far worse to him than breaking any laws and even death itself. At the same time, the cowboy image is unimaginable without an acute sense of personal boundaries and the fear of intrusion. In his world, things are very clear. There's him, and there are others, and between them is a line that must never be crossed. That includes his personal property.
What about your shack, McCready?
I want him in my shack. We'll lock him in the tool shed.
James McCready is exactly that kind of character, even if instead of wild prairies and a trusty steed were given endless Antarctic landscapes and a helicopter. We meet Mac at the moment when he's alone, away from a group, perched in a small observation tower on the edge of the camp, overlooking the vast wild terrain. He's the only one on the station who doesn't sleep in the communal quarters, but instead lives in a small cabin of his own. Although McCready eventually becomes the group's leader, his emotional isolation from the others only deepens as time goes on. This is emphasizing through cinematic techniques, his cold reaction to the deaths of colleagues, and a number of other subtle details.
Sorry, Mac. You have to move your stuff up.
In the first shot where we met McCready, he puts a handful of ice into a glass of alcohol. The man likes to drink alone and entertains himself by playing chess against a computer, simultaneously talking to it about the game's progress. What follows is a loss and a rather impulsive reaction accusing his opponent of cheating.
Cheating bitch.
By the way, right after watching this scene, I went online to look for analysis of the chess game since I barely understand chess myself. On the internet, of course, the game has already been dissected, and the conclusion is clear. What's shown on screen simply makes no sense. Carpenter apparently didn't bother too much with an accurate depiction of the game. All of that is secondary to the director. What's important in this scene is only McCready, his character. his behavior, and his reaction to defeat, and this scene does this task excellently. Mac is clearly displeased by the thought that he was beaten by a soulless dumb time machine, the most valuable thing any cowboy has. His pride was wounded, and this must be immediately followed by an act of reckoning. What happened here personally reminds me most of losing at cards, which for any cowboy is not just a game but a matter of honor. It's the equivalent of the cliché scene where a table is flipped in rage with shoots of cheater and a gun drawn from its holster and waved at the offender. Mac is proud and used to keeping his emotions inside, suppressing them with drinking. Carpenter also stated in the film's commentary that Kurt Russell's character is a former soldier and alcoholic. Life has clearly beaten him hard.
Trust's a tough thing to come by these days.
He's quite comfortable in solitude at the Antarctic station, used to trusting instincts and distrustful of technology and women, which is expressed in his rough interactions with the chest computer that speaks with a female voice. Again, all of this fits the outline archetype. And of course, a cowboy cannot afford relationships that tie him to the people and make him feel the loss of even a shred of his individuality. He's loyal only to himself and his path, so at the end of the western he must ride into the sunset, breaking yet another woman's heart. Alright, we've briefly met MacReady, now let's take a closer look at the antagonist. It's all started with a dog running across the endless expanses of Antarctica and a Norwegian helicopter chasing after it. One of the Norwegians shoots at the animal but can't hit it. The dog runs into the American camp. An enraged man accidentally blows up the helicopter with the pilot inside, hits Bennings with a bullet, and in response gets shot in the eye. At first viewing, the Norwegian's actions seem utterly irrational, but even if we know this is not quite an ordinary dog, it doesn't excuse the people's behavior in this scene. It's a complete communication failure. Both camps didn't understand each other. Literally, people spoke different languages, and figuratively, it was crucial to find common ground now, not to give in to emotions and escalate the spiral of violence. The result: one wounded, two dead, all at the hands of people. It's hard to blame what happened on the thing. Essentially, all the dog did was bring Norwegians and Americans together, erase the dividing line between them, after which people made a mess themselves. Parallels are drawn here with the beginning of military hostilities.
Maybe we had war with Norway.
Here we also see that MacReady turns out to be the only one whose words reveal disdain for the other side.
You really want to save those crazy Swedes, huh?
Norwegians.
Which way, Doc?
Hey, Sweden! Not Swedish, Mac, the Norwegian.
The key difference between the Thing and MacReady and people in general is the complete absence of ego. For the Thing, such boundaries simply doesn't exist. It does not perceive itself as an individual separate from the world around it. It's not even a specific biological species, but all species at once.
It could have imitated a million life forms on a million planets, could change into any one of them at any time. Now it wants life forms on Earth.
It's getting cold in here, Fuchs.
As soon as we humans find ourselves in an isolated environment, we experience stress and immediately strive to build a vertical hierarchy, draw territorial boundaries, and determine who's ours and who is the other. This in turn provokes pride, envy, greed, conflicts, and so on. Naturally, all of these manifests more clearly among men in isolation, which is why Carpenter's setting includes only them. The Thing operates in a fundamentally different way. It does not divide, but rather unites. It forces two groups face to face, as an example with Americans and Norwegians, and sometimes merges two beings into one, exploiting the victim's isolation from the environment. In moments of danger and stress, it even tries to destroy these very boundaries by any means necessary. For example, we remember that dogs are are animals that live in packs with a clearly expressed hierarchy. A newly arrived dog in the pack will inevitably be an outcast for some time. It will be alone against the whole group and will be tested by the pack, including through aggression. On the other hand, in its relationship with humans, the dog is a symbol of unconditional love. It is capable of bonding and giving itself completely in service to its owner. Isn't it ironic that the thing first comes into play in exactly this form? This dog asked the Americans for protecting and for a while received it, but after some time it was kicked out of the common room into the dog pen for getting underfoot. There it immediately entered a stressful situation which triggered the process of aggressive assimilation. As a result, the newly formed boundary between it and the other dogs would be erased, and the director shows this process as something disgusting and frightening. This very process is the fear that our main character fights inside himself. That's why in this scene MacReady is the first to grab a rifle and fire. Meanwhile, Clark, the man who watches over the dogs, opposes him. Clark is of course an analog of Ripley from Alien. His behavior is explained by the fact that he's far more drawn to spending time with the animals than with his colleagues. Or let's look at another somewhat similar situation. The Thing tries to assimilate Bennings, but fails to complete the process. The man runs away and falls to his knees in the snow. He's immediately surrounded by people who silently watch as MacReady carries out a cold-blooded execution, because this scene is staged precisely as an execution, after which the following dialogue takes place.
MacReady, I know Bennings. I've known him for 10 years. He's my friend.
You gotta burn the rest of them.
Again, we see a person showing empathy to another being, even if it is possessed by an alien creature. But MacReady is obsessed with destroying the enemy, and his colleagues' feelings barely bother him. There is no sympathy for the dead here or later. Mac is maximally detached and sees everything as if it's a game, a defeat in which is unacceptable.
And it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's one.
At the same time, if there was any perfect chance in this film to establish communication with an extraterrestrial intelligence, MacReady has just completely ignored it. The idea of waiting until the transformation finishes and trying to talk to the changed Bennings never even crossed his mind. All of MacReady's actions are driven by his personal fears, and until the very end he will try to detect and destroy the Thing until his physical inability to stand stops him. Thus, everything the people do throughout the film, especially our protagonist, is about creating boundaries. They need to know who is human and who is alien, who is an ally and who is an enemy, whose blood is infected and whose is not. The Thing assimilates everything it can reach into one. It doesn't need any of those tests. It doesn't care what your blood type or nationality is. To it, MacReady is evil incarnate, and getting rid of him means saving countless lives. Yes, it also kills living beings, but only to soon return them to life in another renewed form, without the programming inside the head that leads to conflict, loneliness and suffering. Merging with the Thing is essentially an analogous to a spiritual process of enlightenment, as a result of which a person's ego is destroyed. All the boundaries in the mind instantly evaporate, and the person awakens in a renewed world of which they are an integral part. There are plenty of examples in the film where people attacked and even killed each other, but among those assimilated by the Thing, aggression as such is absent. This leads to rather crazy thought at first glance. And what actually is so bad about the Thing taking over a person or even all of humanity. The director makes us reflect, among other things, on this very question. Is better to be a human being than an imitation, or let ourselves be taken over by this creature who is not necessarily evil, but whose nature it is to simply imitate, like a chameleon? What if we just surrendered, and after 27,000 hours the world became a different, safer place for humanity? Do you consider such an outcome terrible? If yes, then what alternatives do you actually propose? Acting like Blair? That is, first grabbing an axe and going to kill all the remaining dogs, then starting to shoot at colleagues who try to stop you? Or like Mac, fighting until you have no strength left, or until everything around you is destroyed, becoming an obsessed killer in the process, trusting no one, consumed by total paranoia, while watching massacres and suicides unfold nearby?
And Clark was human, huh? Which makes you a murderer, don't it?
Let me be clear, I'm not trying to say the people in this film are bad and the Thing is good, or vice versa. We're simply fundamentally different, that's all. This is the thought I'd like you to keep in mind before we start analyzing the ending. The answer to the question posed in the title of this video can be sought by analyzing every scene, looking for slightest hint about which character in the end is human and which is the alien. But this time we'll take a different path. Remember how Carpenter began his story. Antarctica, winter 82, and the display of endless snowy landscapes. Now let's move to the end of the film. The final scenes are stripped of cold tones and instead filled with warmth and fire, surrounded by which yesterday's enemies refuse to continue fighting, and the last shot itself essentially contains nothing but fire. As has been said more than once, MacReady was the coldest of all the men. He made the most detached decisions, killed, and didn't waste much time on guilt. But in this scene, he no longer has strength. He has been sleepless too long, and his body refused to continue the fight. Yet, despite this, a sincere smile happened on his face, a rare emotion for him. It doesn't seem that at this moment the hero is worried at all about the question who among them is the Thing and who's human. It seems for the first time in the whole film, he realizes that the drawing the line yet again will lead nowhere good. What we see here is called acceptance. Acceptance of uncertain situation, acceptance of uncertainty about the identity of the other person and about one's own self, acceptance of death. We see no signs of panic or paranoia on Mac's face, only serenity. This serenity comes simultaneously with his body given out amid the burning technological shelter, without which they are doomed to die. In this scene, there's no division between the Thing and the human, because none of the survivors act based on their ego. So why have you, the people analyzing this film, decided that the director wants you to draw that dividing line at the moment of catharsis? Russell has said that analyzing this scene for clues is missing the point. Carpenter and I worked on the ending of that movie together a long time. We're both bringing the audience right back to square one. At the end of the day, that was the position these people were in. They just didn't know anything. In Carpenter's film The Thing, there is no single definitive interpretation of many events, and there is no answer to the question who's infected at the end of the film and who's not. Sometimes you just have to accept this, although for some of us it will be hard to swallow this pill even after watching this video, because our brain cannot rest until the very line between good and evil is finally drawn.